6 years ago, during the Queen's 90th birthday, there were 15 working royals, members of the family who appeared on behalf of the sovereign at official events. Charles has previously suggested he wants to reduce that number to just 8 senior members, citing financial and practical reasons. Now, with Camilla as queen consort, she automatically becomes one of those 8. The royal halls have seen their fair share of secrets, but nothing could have prepared Princess and young Prince George for what they discovered hidden inside Queen Camilla's private bedroom. What began as an innocent visit quickly turned into a shocking revelation that has left both the monarchy and the public utterly stunned. Was it a forgotten relic, a coded message, or something far more scandalous? One thing's for certain. This discovery could rewrite everything we thought we knew about Queen Camilla's place in the royal legacy. And now, the truth can no longer be hidden. The British monarch has given her blessing for Prince Charles's wife, Camilla, to be called Queen Consort. But a royal walk and an unthinkable discovery at Clarence House in May 2025 could challenge the monarchy's core. Calls for a modern, streamlined royal family have grown louder, with fewer senior royals and tighter public images. Princess and, a steadfast defender of tradition, opposes this, insisting every member plays a crucial role. Yet behind closed doors, something far more unsettling was uncovered. During a routine visit to Queen Camilla's quarters, Princess and young Prince George found something unexpected: a folded, aged handwritten letter from Frances Shand Kidd, Princess Diana's mother. This deeply personal letter revealed Diana's final months, her heartbreak, solitude, and growing isolation behind palace walls. Though beloved by the public, Diana suffered in silence in a world that never embraced her pain. Why this private letter was in Queen Camilla's possession remains a mystery. Was it a hidden memento or forgotten over time? Regardless, the discovery is explosive. Camilla's efforts to reshape her image risk being overshadowed by this painful royal chapter, one that Prince George now witnesses firsthand. This moment was more than a surprise, it was a reckoning. As the next generation watches today's decisions, what lessons will they carry? For Princess Anne, this letter questioned even the oldest loyalties. To understand the letter's weight, we must know Frances Shand Kidd, not just as Diana's mother, but as a woman shaped by aristocratic duty and personal grief. Their strained bond made the letter a final confession, a desperate attempt at closure. What hidden pain did Frances carry from palace halls to heartbreak? Born January 20th, 1936, at Park House on the Sandringham estate, Frances was no stranger to royal life. Her mother was lady-in-waiting to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and her father was a close friend of King George V. Raised in privilege, Frances bore the title the Honorable, and was taught to keep private matters silent behind a graceful exterior. Yet she struggled under the weight of a life she never chose. At 18, Frances made headlines marrying John Spencer, Viscount Althorp, at Westminster Abbey in a ceremony attended by Queen Elizabeth II. It was a grand union, sealing her place among Britain's elite. But beneath glamour, she felt trapped by rigid rules and cold duty. In 1966, Frances met Peter Shand Kidd, a wealthy Australian wallpaper magnate. Their instant connection led her to leave her husband in 1967, filing for divorce, a scandalous act in a time when divorce was taboo, especially among the aristocracy. With 4 young children, including Diana, the ensuing custody battle thrust her into harsh public scrutiny rather than sympathy. Frances Shand Kidd's rebellion became a national spectacle, leaving deep scars on her and her children. But the cost went far beyond public disgrace. It shattered the fragile heart of her daughter Diana. When Frances left the Spencer family home in 1967, she thought she was escaping a suffocating life. She didn't foresee how deeply it would break Diana's world. The betrayal became painfully clear during a bitter custody battle in 1969. In a shocking move, Frances's own mother, Ruth Roche, testified against her, siding with John Spencer as the more stable parent. This fractured family drama played out brutally in public, with a tense, chaotic courtroom atmosphere. The judge awarded full custody of all 4 children, Sarah, Jane, Charles, and Diana, to John Spencer. Frances lost everything: her marriage, status, and her children. Diana, only 6, couldn't understand why her mother suddenly disappeared from her life. That abandonment scarred Diana forever. It affected her relationships, mental health, and self-worth. She later confided that it felt like she left me in public. Though beloved by the world as the people's princess, behind palace walls she struggled to feel truly loved. Though Diana loved her father, she yearned for maternal warmth she felt was stolen. Their reunions were fraught with tension, love mixed with resentment and unspoken pain. The gap left by years apart never fully closed. Then, in 1976, John Spencer married Reine, Countess of Dartmouth, a glamorous and sharp-tongued socialite. Diana, then a teenager, clashed with her stepmother, nicknaming her Acid Reign. The house, once filled with childhood memories, grew cold and unfamiliar. Meanwhile, Frances's second marriage unraveled. By 1988, her relationship with Peter Shand Kidd ended when he returned to his former wife. The woman who risked everything for love was once again left behind. But what happens when a mother loses her children to divorce, only to watch one become the future queen? A silent rift. The unraveling of Frances Shand Kidd's second marriage left her in solitude once more. But fate had one last twist in store. In February 1981, her daughter Diana, now 19, became engaged to Prince Charles, the heir to the British throne. Practically overnight, Frances was thrust back into the public spotlight. She had long tried to leave behind the same aristocracy that had quietly cast her aside. Now, it turned its gaze back to her, this time as the mother of the future Queen of England. It was a strange kind of justice, laced with irony and emotional distance. For Frances, it felt surreal. The child she had once lost to court orders and cold tradition was now poised to rule the very system that had rejected them both. Yet beneath the fairy tale narrative sold to the public, the truth remained far more complicated. The mother-daughter bond that had once been severed never fully healed. Though Frances attended the royal wedding on July 29, 1981 at St. Paul's Cathedral, seated among dignitaries and royalty, she was more a guest than a mother, watching from a distance as Diana was swept into a life of palaces, protocols, and pressure. As Diana's marriage slowly began to fracture, Frances could see echoes of her own life in her daughter's pain. Emotional coldness from a spouse, the crushing weight of public expectation, and the isolating nature of royal life. But unlike Frances, Diana didn't walk away. She stayed, not for herself but for her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, and for the hope that things might change. In 1997, after Diana's very public divorce from Prince Charles, Frances gave an interview to Hello magazine. In it, she commented that Diana was relieved to give up her title of Her Royal Highness. But instead of feeling understood, Diana felt betrayed again. That single comment shattered the fragile relationship they had left. Diana, furious and deeply hurt, never spoke to her mother again. The silence stretched on unbroken until tragedy struck. On August 31, 1997, Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris. The grief that followed was immense. But for Frances, it carried an even sharper edge. There had been no last conversation, no resolution, only silence. Overwhelmed by guilt and loss, Frances released a handwritten note to the public, thanking them for their kindness. In it, she wrote with trembling grace, "With pride, love, and admiration, I return her to him, so that she may rest in peace." The whisper behind closed doors. Frances's sorrowful farewell had barely settled into memory when another royal stir began to brew, one rooted not in the past, but in the ever-complicated present. It started quietly, almost too quietly, over a simple lunchtime visit at Clarence House. Princess Anne, always clear-eyed and duty-bound, arrived with a sense of purpose. Her bond with her brother, King Charles III, was unshakable. In recent months, Anne noticed subtle changes at the palace: Camilla's rising authority, her increasingly private routines, and growing concerns about King Charles's health. The king had been withdrawing from duties, citing fatigue, while Camilla became more visible and powerful. Outsiders saw a natural transition, but Anne, experienced in palace affairs, felt something was wrong. When Camilla started canceling engagements due to exhaustion, Anne's alarm grew. She didn't trust easily and demanded answers about the crown. One cool spring Saturday at Windsor, and visited Camilla's private quarters unannounced, accompanied by 11-year-old Prince George. The two had grown close over the weekend. George admired Anne's honesty, and saw in him a future monarch who might need to learn hidden truths. Camilla's rooms were unusually silent for someone known to keep her space open and informal. Locked doors and drawn curtains felt off. A hesitant chambermaid told Anne Camilla had left that morning for her private estate, Raymill House in Wiltshire, without her usual staff. This sudden, noteless departure was unlike her. The stillness in Clarence House, especially Camilla's area, felt calculated, and George exchanged uneasy looks, sensing something bigger was unfolding. The quiet palace hid a weighty secret. Inside the untouched room, Anne's instinct sharpened. The silence was deliberate. No signs of daily life, no flowers, no teacup, just a faint, lingering lavender scent from another time. Determined, Anne called the palace steward, ready to uncover what lay hidden behind the sealed doors. Few would question she requested the master key. As second-born, but never second in command when it came to resolving, and unlocked the chamber door herself. She stepped inside slowly, with young Prince George close behind her, his eyes scanning every detail with the quiet curiosity of someone too young to know what to expect, yet old enough to sense when something wasn't right. The room's stillness was almost theatrical. Velvet drapes were drawn tight, the light barely filtering in. Then, behind a faded dressing screen in the far corner, George spotted something. A large aged trunk secured by a worn brass clasp. Its wood was darkened with time, and dust had settled across the top, but the faint engraving still shone through. He looked closer, eyes widening. "D.S.," he murmured aloud. "Diana Spencer." Anne's breath caught. "George, step back," she said firmly, her voice steady but tight. She walked toward the trunk with deliberate steps, taking a pair of lace gloves from Camilla's vanity before handling the old lock. With a soft creak, the trunk opened. Inside, time stood still. There, folded and preserved as if waiting to be rediscovered, lay dozens of deeply personal items that hadn't seen the light of day since Princess Diana's tragic passing in 1997. Letters written in her flowing, emotional handwriting. Private journals filled with thoughts too raw for public view. Black and white photographs capturing unscripted moments, laughing with her sons, gazing out from palace windows, even solitary walks that spoke of a quieter, unseen life. There were souvenirs, too. Small keepsakes like a ballet program with notes in the margins, a pressed flower in a book, and a tiny music box that still played a soft lullaby when opened. And gently pulled out one envelope, its edges yellowed but sealed with a wax crest. She didn't open it. Not yet. George stood silent, understanding somehow that this wasn't just about the past. It was a hidden part of his family story, and one that was never meant to be found in Camilla's room. Whispers from the past. And didn't move. The air around her felt thick with history, heavy with questions that no one had ever dared to ask aloud. Prince George, still standing a few steps behind her, watched her face closely, as if trying to read the storm of thoughts brewing behind her steady eyes. Among the carefully preserved letters, one sat slightly apart, folded with an eerie kind of urgency. George picked it up gently. The handwriting was unmistakably Diana's. The words, "To my sons, in case anything ever happens to me." The gravity of it hit, like a chill down the spine. This was no ordinary letter. This was a warning wrapped in love, a desperate attempt to reach across time. And read on, pulling out another note. "Pleasure sitting next to you before, and I thought perhaps you decided that as you knew what is in store, you decided to go elsewhere." Dated just months before the fatal crash in Paris in August 1997, it was penned in crimson ink, an unmistakable signal of importance. This one, addressed to Queen Elizabeth II, was deeply personal, yet laced with concern. Diana wrote of feeling watched, of hearing clicks on her phone line, and sensing a shadow always trailing her. She confessed to a fear that she might never live long enough to see William and Harry grow into men. Her words were full of longing and dread. Anne's fingers stiffened. If these letters were real, if these were indeed Diana's final reflections, Then how had they ended up here? In Camilla's private quarters. There was no official archive sticker, no protective case, no royal seal, just raw, exposed fragments of a woman who had suffered alone. And that made the discovery all the more disturbing. The possibilities were few and troubling. Had Camilla taken them in the chaos following Diana's death, back when her personal belongings were quickly removed from Kensington Palace, during a period riddled with confusion, mourning, and unanswered questions? Or worse, had someone from within Diana's circle passed them on willingly? Perhaps even Charles himself? The thought sat uneasily with Anne. Charles, haunted by guilt and determined to make peace with the past, might have believed Camilla deserved to see Diana's truth. But giving her these letters, the ones meant for her sons, for her mother-in-law, it felt like crossing a line too sacred to touch. And if they were meant to be preserved, why had Camilla hidden them away? Not stored with care or donated to the royal archives, but locked in a private room, untouched, unspoken of. And why, after all this time, had she left so abruptly, abandoning them like forgotten luggage? And turned to George, her voice quiet. "These weren't meant to be lost," she said. But the question still hovered in the air, unspoken and sharp. Who had betrayed Diana again? But what secrets did Princess and Prince George uncover in Queen Camilla's hidden room? And who truly betrayed Diana again? The truth might be more shocking than anyone imagined. The photograph that spoke louder than silence. The room remained hushed, as if the walls themselves were listening, and reached deeper into the old chest, her fingers brushing against a worn manila envelope sealed tightly. The words "private," "do not open," "eyes only" were stamped across it in faded black ink. Her heart pounded, her instinct sharpened. Without a word, she unfastened the seal. Prince George stood close now, eyes wide and watchful, the weight of inheritance dawning slowly across his young face. Inside were photographs, images the public had never seen. Snaps of Diana laughing with William and Harry in the Highgrove Gardens, barefoot in the grass, carefree and radiant. But one photo made Anne's hands tremble. It was taken just weeks before Diana's tragic death in Paris on August 31st, 1997. She stood alone in a corridor at Clarence House. Her smile was absent, her eyes distant, hollow almost. Beside her, partially cropped out, stood another woman. Her arm was unmistakably adorned with a gold bracelet, the one Camilla had worn for decades. Anne's breath caught. What was Camilla doing there? Had they met in secret? What passed between them, if anything? She turned to George, whose face was pale. "What made Queen Camilla keep these?" he asked softly, and had no answer. Neither did anyone else in the palace. Later that day, the silence that had settled over Windsor broke like glass. Word reached King Charles. Camilla was quietly summoned. There was no official statement, no televised apology. Only a stifled storm behind closed doors. Insiders whispered of a fierce exchange between Anne and her brother. She demanded to know why the contents had been hidden for so long. Camilla's voice reportedly quivered when she replied, "I kept them out of fear. I didn't take them to harm anyone. I wanted to understand her, to make peace. Peace, perhaps. But to Anne and many others, it felt like possession. And that line, too, had been crossed." Prince William, stunned, insisted that every item be returned to his mother's estate. Harry, informed by and from afar, reportedly said nothing at all. But his silence spoke volumes. The press, as expected, exploded. Headlines screamed, "Diana's secret diaries found in Camilla's room," and "Princess and exposes royal truth." The public reaction was swift. Old suspicions about Camilla's role in Diana's life and legacy were reignited. Sympathy swelled once more for the woman many still called the people's princess. Diana's words, thoughts, and deepest wounds had resurfaced. The pain she had once buried in pages now echoed through the palace. And, ever steadfast, decided it could not end in silence again. Plans quietly began. Select letters might one day be released to the public, with William's approval. The world deserved to hear Diana's voice again. But in the heart of it all, one thing remained clear. The truth had not been destroyed. It had only been hidden until a boy and his great-aunt opened a chest that refused to stay closed. But what more do you think Queen Camilla was hiding in that sealed chest? And why was Diana's final photo with her kept secret for so long? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe and comment below.